In the last class, we distinguished three kinds of appeals to authority, and today I want to talk about the first of those three kinds, a kind of argument that we'll call amplifiers. What's an amplifier? We'll define it, and then we'll consider a couple of examples. First, we'll consider examples of amplifiers that are actually good arguments, and then we'll look at some amplifiers that are bad arguments. Okay, so first, here's the definition. What's an amplifier? An amplifier is an argument that begins with premises about a particular person who's making a point, and it ends with a conclusion to the effect that we should place great weight or lend great credence to the person's point, right? Whatever the person is saying, they have a special entitlement. They're especially authoritative to say it. Okay, so that's an amplifier. Now, I said sometimes amplifiers are good arguments. To see an example of a couple of amplifiers, both of which are good arguments, I'd like you to look at the following clip.
And the funny part of it is, Marshall McLuhan, you don't know anything about Marshall McLuhan's work.
Really? I happen to teach a class at Columbia called TV, Media, and Culture. So I think that my insights into Mr. McLuhan, well, have a great deal of validity.
Oh, do you?
Okay. Now, in that clip, we saw a person who was a Columbia University professor arguing as follows, implicitly arguing as follows. I teach a class on media and popular culture at Columbia University. Therefore, you should lend great credence to my views on the issues of which I speak. That seemed to be the argument that the person was making. That's why he brought up the fact that he teaches a class on media and popular culture at Columbia University in order to lend credence to his views on the topic. Okay, now it's true that if someone is a Columbia University professor who teaches a particular topic, that does tend to establish some credibility that they might have on that topic. But while that might be a good amplifier argument, it doesn't prove that its conclusion is true, and to see that it doesn't prove, not conclusively anyway, that its conclusion is true, we need to look at the rest of that clip and consider another amplifier argument that occurs in the rest of that clip, right here.
Because I happen to have Mr. McLuhan right here. So yeah, just let me come over here a second.
Oh,
Tell him.
I heard what you were saying. You know nothing of my work. You mean my whole fallacy is wrong. How you ever got to teach a course in anything is totally amazing.
Boy, if life were only like this.
Okay, so what's happening there? What's happening there is that Marshall McLuhan himself appears. Now, Woody Allen, like the rest of us, can reason as follows. Marshall McLuhan himself is the world's most noted living expert on popular media and culture, or at least he was at the time that that movie was made. Therefore, we should lend great credence to whatever it is that Marshall McLuhan says on that topic. Unfortunately, since what Marshall McLuhan says on that topic is directly opposed to what the Columbia University professor says on that topic, the conclusion of our first amplifier argument is a conclusion that gets overridden by this second amplifier argument. Okay, so you have two amplifier arguments that occur in that clip that I just showed. Both amplifier arguments are good arguments. They're not sound arguments, they're not deductively sound, but they're inductively strong. But as we saw in Unit 3 of the course, an inductively strong argument can still have a false conclusion. This is a case where we have two inductively strong arguments. They can't both have a true conclusion. One of them must have a false conclusion. And it appears that our second amplifier argument overrides our first. So here's a case where we have two good amplifier arguments. But good amplifier arguments are pretty few and far between. More often in daily life, we find bad amplifier arguments.